Hello there, and welcome back to Bloodborne, my fellow hunters. Before we begin with the episode proper, something I ought to address, the rather large amount of blood echoes that we currently have. That is from doing a bit of co-op for these vermin, that we shall now turn into Volta.
You will be welcomed as a true Confederate. Go forth with renewed vigor. In short time, you will see how the mission takes hold of one's spirits.
Of course, we're not simply turning them into him, but crushing them in front of him. It's not actually necessary to crush them in front of Volta, you just need to crush them, period, in order to rank up in the League.
Hello, Confederate. Has your stomach not turned at the world of man, so wondrously wretched and brimming with unsightly vermin, much like our very own mission?
Crushing the remaining 2, for a total of 5, allows us to rank up once more for a bit more dialogue from Volta.
Hello, Confederate. Your eyes say all. You've crushed vermin time and time again. You've seen the filth that varnishes the world of man. Yet, you are unbroken. You've the eyes of a hunter. You have blessed the League with your presence. This was my last, most pressing task. My Confederate, promise me you'll crush all vermin to rid us of our impurities for the sake of our fellows, all blood-stained hunters of the League.
On our honor as a member of the League, we solemnly swear to do this. So, at this point, once you've delivered 5 crushed vermin, you need to quit and reload the game in order for things to progress. Volta is gone, having absconded as the master of the League and leaving his helm there for us to take, as its new master. A single hole allows one to peek out with a single eye, which is probably all that its original owner had. This cyan helm is passed down among masters of the League. Volta had in fact lost the ability to see vermin long ago. Alright then, let's head back to the dream and level up at the— Whoa! Who are you? After becoming the master of the League and leaving that little windmill there, you get assaulted by this hunter axe-wielding hunter, who is wearing an armor set that we have not yet seen. It's another DLC armor set. He also has a rather nifty trick up his sleeve, such as this new added hunter tool that he loves to use, and will likely catch you if you're unfamiliar with it. But aside from that, he's not too terribly threatening, although like all hunter fights, you don't want to take him like a complete joke, as if you get cocky, he will wreck your face in, especially since he has pretty high damage output. It's worth noting that there are 2 other conditions on which this NPC will spawn. The first is killing Volta, which makes enough sense, I suppose. The other is a bit odd and seems to be more of a glitch in my opinion. Right after you offer your first vermin to Volta and you get the League Oath and the League Staff, if you quit and reload the game, this hunter will have spawned by the lantern. He will not be aggroed and will be facing away from you, letting you start the battle off with a charge attack into a visceral attack. But yeah, those are all the conditions upon which this hunter will spawn. And once dead, we can pick up the very hunter tool that he himself was using. The Madaris Whistle, notable for being the only hunter tool in the game to acquire and scale with Blood Tinge, as opposed to Arcane. Whistle of the Madaris twins, denizens of the Forbidden Woods who grew alongside a poisonous snake and developed a silent, inhuman kinship. Even after their deaths, it is said to respond to the call of the whistle from within the nightmare. And using that, we can summon the snake. And it's capable of friendly fire, that is why that he dodged away each time he used it. That, plus the fact that its damage is rather poor unless you have high blood tinge, means we'll be not using it all that much. At any rate, let's get around to using those blood echoes for some levels.
Welcome home, good hunter. What is it you desire?
You know what we desire.
Very well. Let the echoes become your strength. Let me stand close. Now shut your eyes.
So, at some point we're going to need 30 arcane to use another tool available in the DLC, but that point is a fair bit away from now. So I'm glad to say that we're going to be putting those points into vitality, increasing our HP and making my job that much easier.
Farewell, good hunter. May you find your worth in the waking world.
So we have nothing else to do in the dream here, so let's return to the nightmare and see if we can't make some more progress. But before we actually go after the enemies, let's check out the other weapon that we have equipped now. The boom hammer that we picked up last time. A giant hammer equipped with a miniature furnace. When ignited and fired, it emits a volley of flame that explodes furiously upon impact. Crush the beasts, then burn them. The brute simplicity of the boom hammer was favored by hunters with an acute distaste for beasts. And it is a rather novel trick weapon. It would best be compared to the Tonitrus in terms of how it operates. Rather than transforming between two modes, using the transform button instead gives it something of a buff. Rather than lasting for a limited period of time and boosting the damage of all attacks done within that period, it instead lasts an indefinite amount of time, but runs out upon using the next attack, thus only boosting that attack. This affects how you must operate to most effectively use the weapon. While it is ideal to go into combat situations with the hammer alight to boost your first hit, you want to be able to have as many boosted hits as possible, so once you have run that one hit out, you want to follow up with the transforming attack if possible, doing damage and lighting the hammer once more to do yet another explosive attack. But at the same time, you can't have all of your attacks be the explosive attack, because while lit, all of the attacks done with the hammer consume considerably more stamina. So if you're simply looking to spam against an enemy to stun lock them, unlit attacks are the best for that. Speaking of, as a heavy weapon, it is excellent for stun locking a lot of the tougher enemies. It's up there in terms of the Ludwig's Holy Blade and its ability to stun lock larger enemies. But it's not without its flaws. For one, even when lit, the damage is somewhat poor compared to other weapons within its class, such as the aforementioned Ludwig's Holy Blade. It also has especially poor Valley, meaning it's really difficult to recover HP with this, should you be hit, and that effect is decreased even more when the weapon is lit. So it can be a tricky weapon to use in some situations. At any rate, we thankfully do not have to deal with these bloodlickers over here, as they've gone back to ignoring us, but the same can't be said for the ones in front of us. Because they are guarding an item, and if a bunch of tough enemies are guarding an item, you know it's something you want. Now I say tough, again, previously we had no trouble with the bloodlickers on this river of blood here, but that is because they were spaced out far enough we could get it down to a series of 1v1s. Dealing with 3 or 4 at once is another story entirely, which is why we're using pebbles here, to draw them out one at a time. Shaman Boneblade is also an option, but I elected not to do that here, just because from prior experience I know I've had difficulty with actually landing the damn thing on these enemies here. As you can see, the boom hammer is pretty effective at taking them out, not just because of its ability to stun lock them, but because the charged buffed attack is pretty damn powerful and sends them flying away, giving them a longer distance they need to cover to run back to their allies, and making it easier to interrupt them. Unfortunately, it had a bit of a negative effect there, aggroing this otherwise happy-to-be-alone Bloodlicker. But fortunately, it only aggroed her, so we're able to deal with her without much difficulty. If it had aggroed both of them over there, that'd be a different story, but thankfully that was not what happened. At this point here, with only 2 remaining, we can afford to be a bit more aggressive, since there's no chance of aggroing any other Bloodlickers during the combat. By the way, as you can see here, the jumping buffed attack is nearly as effective as the charged buffed one. A bit weaker, but considerably quicker, and it has the same knockback property, so it's excellent for multi-opponent fights, giving you the ability to knock one away and then focus on the other. And so these 2 Bloodlickers go down without too much trouble, as expected of a badass self. And for killing them all, we receive a worthy reward in an armor piece, the Constable's Trousers. Last time we actually picked up the Constable's Gloves. They're both part of the same set. Once upon a time, a troop of foreign constables chased the beast all the way to Yharnam. The constables became victims of the beast, except for one survivor who in turn devoured the creature whole, all by himself. This fable is a favorite among Yharnamites who are partial to any stories of pompous, intolerant foreigners who suffer for their ignorance. It makes the blood taste that much sweeter. But yeah, as we already know, Yharnamites are a rather nasty lot. That one survivor though does sound like a badass. Hopefully we'll get to meet him, and hopefully not in an antagonistic way. At any rate, continuing on here, we encounter a fearsome dogger. The boomhammer is especially effective at dealing with them thanks to its fire damage. A single buff dot-2 followed by the transforming attack is enough to take one out. Same with his buddy here. Here we get to a part of the nightmare with some houses. Unfortunately, there are no people inside any of them that we could try and talk to. Here we have a potentially dangerous encounter if you just rush forward and try to deal with the carrion crows, thanks to that beast cutter wielding hunter in the distance. You either want to be especially aggressive or especially defensive here, either bum rushing the carrion crows to take them out immediately if you have the capability, the damage to do so, or lagging back and letting the hunter walk forward. Dealing with them both at the same time, especially with his rather odd shotgun blast, is not something you want to do. But once the hunter is taken care of, the crows are easily finished off, again, especially the boomhammer being effective at these types of enemies, thanks to their weakness to fire. If you notice, there are actually bits of the Yharnam sewer as part of the environment here. Appropriate given how vile and wretched this area is, where the river of blood is coming from. One last dogger and a hunter to deal with here, but they're no real threat. The true threat here is that of desire. For there is an item just out of our reach. Alas. And if that weren't enough, there is yet another item just out of our reach right here. Oh, speaking of this area being wretched, if you pay attention, you'll notice that not all of these corpses in the River of Blood are corpses. A number are still wretchedly clinging to the last vestiges of their life. Now, before we progress onward, let's stop and pay attention here to go down some side pathways for worthwhile loot. Dropping down here, we acquire the last piece of the constable's set, the constable's garb. And is it just me, or does that garb not look a little bit familiar, like we've seen someone wearing it not too long ago? Perhaps our memory will jog itself later. At any rate, heading back to this upper area here, one more side path before we continue on. This one to claim one of the items that so taunted us from out of our reach. But we don't want to go after this one just yet, for it has a guard, a red-eyed hunter with a beast hunter scythe and no gun. This guy here is probably one of the more dangerous hunters in this area here. He has ridiculous amounts of HP and does truly ludicrous amounts of damage with some of his attacks, mainly the ones when his weapon is extended. But thanks to a sick stagger shot, we're able to take him out without much issue. But don't underestimate him, that's for sure. He can kill you the quickest of pretty much any hunter in this first area of the DLC. We don't get anything special for killing him, instead the reward was the item ahead that we saw. And it is a worthwhile reward indeed, being the very same weapon that he was wielding, the Beast Hunter Scythe. A very skillful weapon in both meanings of the word. That is, that it scales with the skill stat, and requires great skill to use effectively. Oh, and yes, I did skip that item drop there, don't worry, it was just a vermin. At this point, there's no point in ranking up in the league. There's no more content to be gained from it. As we arrive closer and closer to the source of the river and blood, things become far more danger-fraught. We now have to deal with a nightmare executioner, this one wielding a large cannon as opposed to an axe, who is quite dangerous on his own, never mind the fact that he is in fact accompanied by a regular axe-wielding one off to the side here. It's not really feasible to fight the axe-wielding one while this one is bombarding you from a distance, so it's best to sneak around here, let them ignore you, and then you can take out the cannon-wielding one without gaining the axe-wielding one's attention. They are an enemy type especially susceptible to the backstabbing power of the Augur of Ebrietas. And this one here drops more than enough Quicksilver bullets to make up for the ones we used with the Augur. Now we could cheese this axe-wielding one here, but let's give him a fighting chance after softening him up a little bit. Let's see what he's capable of. So one of the two actually dangerous moves that the initial one we encountered did not get a chance to use was this buff. In addition to having an initial attack with a ridiculous radius, it also buffs all of his future attacks, which make them that much tougher to dodge, and make it so that if you get hit with the actual weapon itself, there's a very good chance you'll be one-shot, especially if you don't have especially high health. The other attack was that attempted grab attack with his tentacle beard. That does it also an especially high amount of damage and is quite potentially a one-shot, depending on how much HP you have. But again, the Augur of Ebrietas kind of chumps them. So heading down here to where the axe-wielding one came from, we come across a new armor set, but one that we've actually seen already. The Butcher set, worn by the hunter, the Madaris twin, that attacked us. And right here, before you kill the Madaris twin, you can actually summon him here as an ally. But once you've fully completed the quest of the League and killed him, he disappears. Notably, his red sign marks him as a member of the League, suggesting that perhaps his attacking you is trying to steal leadership of the League for his own, or perhaps revenge for Volta, since him showing up can be triggered by you killing Volta. At any rate here, we stumble across the second lantern in the nightmare, and a truly worthwhile one, because the boss is shortly ahead. But before we head after the boss, let's finish exploring this first part of the area, especially since there's some truly worthwhile items over here. First of all, some chunks from this wandering nightmare. Second of all, that shadow is... yeah, you're not fooling anyone, you hunter you. But let's actually pretend that we didn't notice him up there, because it's kinda cool if you just walk forward like this. It's actually a pretty solid ambush, all things considered. But not enough to fool us. We do have to be a bit careful here. We don't want to knock him off, because jumping down to deal with him would be rather difficult. In addition to taking fall damage, there are some carrion crows down there, and they certainly don't make things any easier for you. So it's best to just deal with them up here. There's also another NPC summon over this way. This one here is not especially profound or has any interesting implications, at least not to my knowledge. It's just Henriette. And over here, the item placed to trick you into rushing forward and getting surprised by that hunter is just some twin bloodstone shards. Not worthless for us certainly, but not exactly great treasure. No, that comes ahead shortly. But first we have to deal with these carrion crows. As long as we don't get a stun lock by them, they're easy enough to take out as always. Seriously, the boom hammer has its faults. It's not a weapon I'm a particular fan of. I feel its moveset is a bit awkward, but when dealing with the weaker beast enemies, it really can't be beat. So, moving on forward here, progressing a bit further to... Hello, where did you come from? It's some weird snail creature. Ugh, gross. Was it attached to the wall? But it kind of looked like it just dropped from the sky. Weird. And what you may not know if you've played this game is the fact that, well, normally you can't hurt it, it's not alive. For whatever reason, attacking it with the Madaris whistle will actually damage it. Moreover, it will actually bring it back to life, making it active and giving it a health bar. Here we can see it is probably a lady, although certainly not a healthy looking one, that's for sure. And once you've revived her with the Madaris whistle, you can then finish her off with regular attacks, but you gain nothing for it, not even any blood echoes. I'm not sure why you can hurt her with the Madaris whistle. I can only assume it has something to do with it being friendly fireable, but who knows. At any rate, the reason to come through this little side path here is to pick up that item that so taunted us. Probably the most valuable weapon in the DLC, if you can use it, because it is the most powerful weapon in the DLC, and the most powerful weapon in the game, period, to the point that even after a nerf, it is still easily the best weapon in the game. It is a heavy weapon, like Ludwig's Holy Blade, so it's great at stun locking, and it has ridiculous damage output, especially when combined with a certain other item. You'll see what that is a bit later. We'll actually be using it this video here. Now, you don't want to progress forward just yet. You want to pay attention, because we're not quite alone here. There's one of these Hemrick-like witch ladies here, and if you just rush forward, she will show up behind you and attempt to scrape out your eyes. That actually happened to me on my first run of this area here. I ended up dying to the boss, waiting at the fog gate, and she came up and surprised me, which was pretty amusing. Aside from these carrion crows here, there's one more living entity. A barely alive corpse, struggling to get past this gate. For putting him out of his misery, you receive a reward of 5 blood vials. It's worth noting that he respawns, and since he's right next to a lantern, this makes an excellent blood vial farming spot, if you have the time and the inclination. Over here we have another League summon. This one is for Volta. Although if you paid attention to the moniker after his name, it was rather interesting. Let's summon him and take a better look at what that is. Volta, Beast Eater, and without his helmet. So, the lone survivor mentioned in the story of the constable's garb was in fact Volta, the only survivor of a troop of constables that chased the beast to Yharnam, and ultimately the founder of the League. It's worth noting that if you come here before progressing in the League, his summon sign will still be there, but it will be for Volta, Master of the League, not Volta, Beast Eater, and he will have his helmet equipped. So let's venture onward and discover the source of the River of Blood.
Please, help us. An unsightly beast. A great terror looms. Ludwig Curse is coming. Have mercy. Have mercy upon us.
Say hello to Ludwig the Accursed, the first hunter of the Healing Church and the progenitor of the Order of Ludwig's Holy Blade. I'm just gonna say right away that Ludwig here is one of the toughest bosses in the game. In fact, I would consider him the second hardest, the hardest being the DLC's final boss, something to look forward to there. Not only is he the second hardest boss in the DLC, he's the second hardest in the game, and the second hardest out of any Soulsborne title, in my opinion. He's big, he does a lot of damage, he's very aggressive, and his attacks hit a wide range around him due to all the flailing that he does. He has a large variety of attacks, each with its own dodge timing, and a lot of his attacks are combos that you have to dodge through multiple times to avoid eating a lot of damage. Moreover, he has a boatload of HP, which means even if you attack him aggressively, you're only going to tickle his health bar. And that's even more the case since we've summoned Volta here, as Ludwig has increased HP and defenses as a result. It can also be difficult to find the time to heal against him. He pretty much just does a constant barrage of attacks, and a number of his attacks have quite long reach, so if you don't have a summon with you to distract him, it can be very difficult to find the time to heal. Thankfully, Volta is plenty good at distracting, even if he's not the best at dealing damage. If you run out of blood vials in this fight, there's a drop of 3 there that can be helpful. And this water spray is best avoided by strafing in the direction of the attack while maintaining a long distance from Ludwig. I wouldn't advise trying to dash through it, as it's very tricky timing, and if you time it just off, you'll eat a lot of damage. So Ludwig is a really difficult boss, and if you make just a single mistake, you can end up getting easily trampled to death, as you saw there. So let's try things again, this time without summoning Volta to boost Ludwig's HP and defense, and with another, better weapon. The Whirligig Saw that we just picked up, the very weapon that Volta himself was using, upgraded to +6 of course, for decent damage. In addition, we'll be taking advantage of an item that synergizes extremely well with the Whirligig, the Beast Blood Pellets, as well as some Fire Paper for a bit of extra damage. So, the Whirligig is an interesting weapon. It is a rotating saw on the end of a stick. For each of its attacks, it ends up hitting multiple times, and this means it builds up the beast meter very quickly when using the Beast Blood Pellets. If you've forgotten, every time you attack, you raise that meter a little bit. And this allows you to output ridiculous amounts of damage. As the meter fills, your damage increases, as does the damage that you take, so it's not entirely without risk. But if you're good at avoiding attacks and you get in just a few R1s, you can do ridiculous amounts of damage. That was a whole 3k right there. It just shreds his HP to pieces. And this is a +6 Whirligig. If this were +9, which this fight is arguably balanced for, he'd be dying even quicker. Oh, and right here we had a neat opportunity for a visceral attack, which unfortunately failed due to a height difference, I think. Which sucks, because it would have made this so much cooler.
You were at my side all along. My true mentor, my guiding moonlight.
Say hello to Phase 2 of Ludwig, introduced by a rather neat mid-battle cutscene. His famed blade, previously on his back, is now in his hands, and in his hands it is quite dangerous. This ain't the dinky little toy that we've been using that his followers all use. This is the real deal, the true Blade of Moonlight. So, Ludwig Phase 2 can be a bit of a trouble the first time you reach it, because his style of fighting in this phase is completely different than his style of fighting in his first phase. In his first phase, he's all chaotic and wild and his attacks are kind of all over the place, but here his attacks are slower, more focused, and more measured. And because of that, even if you spent a lot of time getting Phase 1 down pat, Phase 2 is like an entire another boss that you have to learn. And of course, if you die, you have to go through the entire first phase again before you can get your second shot at practicing the second phase, which makes him rather tiresome for some people. This is technically true for other bosses in this game, but it's just so much more obvious here because of how different the two phases are. Anyway, yeah, we eventually go down to his projectile attacks, which are kind of tricky to dodge through. So, second attempt at Phase 2. We won't be using Beast Blood Pellets here, just because of the increased damage makes him especially lethal in this phase. It makes a lot of his attacks just straight up one-shots. So not something I'd overly recommend unless you're really good at dodging his attacks here, and spoilers, I'm not that great. I actually get slightly better as the fight goes on, as I remember the timings a bit better, but I still get clipped by his hits every now and again. Generally speaking, you do want to stay close to him because his attacks with his sword have a lot of reach, so even if you're at a distance, you can still easily get hit. His safest place is again close by him, where you can dodge through his swings or even avoid them entirely just by being at his side or backside, depending on which particular attack he's doing. And being close to him allows you to be more aggressive and attack him more quickly, which is ideal, as if you get off a lot of attacks on him, you can make him collapse, or just get regular stun. And if he collapses, you can then follow up with a visceral attack to really wreck his HP. Basically, this is a fight that you want to end as quickly as possible because Ludwig is just straight up better than you. And if you make it a war of attrition, he's probably going to win. And finally, Ludwig the Holy Blade, the first hunter of the church, goes down. A victory for us, and we even receive a special guidance rune. But although it is a victory for us, Ludwig himself is not yet at rest. His head is still just barely alive in this nightmare here.
Good hunter, have you seen the thread of light? Just a hair, a fleeting thing. Yet I clung to it, steeped as I was in the stench of blood and beasts. I never wanted to know what it really was. Really, I didn't.
So if you continue to talk to him as such, he'll just continue to whinny and grunt. But if you equip any piece of armor with the holy shawl, the sign of the healing church, on it...
Tell me, good hunter of the church, have you seen the light? Are my church hunters the honorable Spartans? I hoped they would be. Ah, good. That is a relief. To know I did not suffer such denigration for nothing. Thank you kindly. Now I may sleep in peace. Even in this darkest of nights, I see the moonlight.
And for allowing Ludwig to rest in peace, we obtain his holy moonlight sword. Now we hold the power of the moonlight, the true sword of Ludwig. The power of moonlight that can be unleashed at will.